Hello, good morning, everybody. How are we doing today? My name is Stanley from Value Invest Asia. Welcome to day two of our grand webinar 2020. Thank you very much for all of you guys who have joined. And if you're first time joining our grand webinar 2020 or even being a new member of VIA Club, I just want to officially welcome all of you. We have been running our grand webinar for 3 years now. I think we started in 2018. And to be honest, this is actually the first time that we integrate it into our VIA club. So it's great value for everyone who have joined us, and thank you for supporting supporting Value Invest Asia. Is without your help, is almost impossible for us to continue doing and providing our research and content for everyone. So I just want to thank you for letting me have kind of my dream job, and I'm very grateful for all of your support. Today we have some very interesting company for you guys. From I think in the morning we're going to talk about Microsoft and Facebook, two of my favorite tech company at the moment. And then on the later part, we'll have a presentation on the life of Warren Buffett. A lot of us would get into investing, especially value investing, because of Warren Buffett. But maybe not everyone truly understand how he became who he has been now. So the amount of sacrifice that he made, and both to himself and to his family, and we kind of let's investigate if we have what it takes to become the next Warren Buffett as well. In the afternoon session, starting at 2 p.m. in Singapore time, we're gonna talk about our last three company, which is China Gas, Older Home, and also Philippine 7 Corp. Very, very interesting company. You wouldn't want to miss that. And after that, we're going to end up with a Q&A session. And I'm going to talk more about what's on your mind, and also maybe look through our past stock guide since 2017, and maybe go through some of the stock, and which are the ones that I'm still quite optimistic about, which are the one that I might have changed my mind about. I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well, right? So I can see more and more people joining us coming up online. And if you're here, good morning. Maybe let me know where are you connecting from, and what do you have for breakfast? But without further ado, let's get started on our first part of our presentation this morning, which is looking at Microsoft and Facebook. Here we go. All right. So for this part of the presentation, I'm going to go through my thesis for Microsoft and also Facebook. And if you have any question for me, do write it down on the live chat, and I'll come back to you guys during the Q&A session. Okay, first up, let's talk more about Microsoft first. So this is really now one of the few companies that I have to say I'm very, very optimistic about. Of course, I make a lot of mistake before in my investment. That's why even though I'm very optimistic about it, I wouldn't, I never really bet a big amount on one company. I might share with you why that is the case, the way I structured my portfolio. But right now, Microsoft, definitely one of the company that I'm really optimistic about, and it has to play into what I think is gonna be the long-term trend going forward right now, globally, in the sense there is a new space race, and this is coming in the form of the competition between technology company, both in the US and in China. You can think about how a modern society now actually works. For myself, at least, I kind of live my entire life on Google, right? Every data that I have is on Google. I started using Gmail for many years now. my all my photos are uploaded to Google Photo as a backup, and I actually run our business on Google Suite, and so actually every time Google change their policy, it might actually impact me more than what, say, the government changes some of their policies. So in a way, we are kind of living in a life that is controlled or being guided by all these large tech company, and it affects not just citizens like ourselves, but even companies, and the company decision is affected by all what the policy of all these tech company is gonna be. Say for example, I'm sure you guys have heard of the company Waze, the GPS company that allows you to travel around, right? Many of us would have used that. But the story of how actually Waze came up to become dominant and at the later stage getting acquired by Google is quite fascinating, because it all started because of the policy of Apple. When Apple started their iPhone, they were working with Google on to letting Google use Google Map on iPhone. But after a while, they tried to erase Google from the equation and try to set up Apple Map. When it first started, it was quite bad, and many people doesn't want to use Apple Map because it's just not good enough. And so what happened was, Apple realized that it was a mistake on their part, and they kind of recommended for Apple users to start using Waze, right? And from an unknown small navigation app, it really become the dominant navigation app on Apple iOS. And from there, it really gained popularity. And you can see that just the policy of Apple really built up the whole company. I'm sure Apple tried to acquire Waze at one point, but of course, the story goes is Waze got acquired by Google, and now Waze is part of the Google family, right? And so, in a way, if you are a large country like China, you're gonna be worried about that, because you don't want your national security or your businesses being reliant on the tech companies. And at the current point, many of the software or even semicon technology is still controlled by US firms. So there's going to be a worry there. And similarly on US case, a lot of the technology in hardware and especially telecommunication equipment now with Huawei and ZTE, those are predominantly innovated by Chinese company right now. And it's a security risk for them. And so for both countries, they really want technological independence. They want to make sure that they control, or at least have friendly party controlling the technology, so that it doesn't affect them in any ways. And so we're going to see that there's going to have a big space race, and the two countries is going to support their local tech firm to make sure that they become the dominant platform or the dominant technology that the world use, so that they are in control of all the information in the future. And if we can already see that these are already panning out both in the hardware space and also in the software space. If we just look at the hardware space, who are the main players right now? If you're talking about telecommunication equipment, 5G, right now is dominated by Huawei, Ericsson, Nokia, and Qualcomm. Both of these are either US link or Chinese firms. Manufacturing capability as well is dominated by TSMC, your Foxconn, both China-based, Taiwan-based, and also Samsung and Intel. And you can see that even in the component side, when you look at, say, the CPU or GPU, all these firms are mostly either US-based or China-based except for maybe ARM and Samsung. But ARM right now is a UK company, but a subsidiary of SoftBank, which is a company in Japan, right? And you can see that it's already consolidated the industry, and the large will continue to innovate and become larger. This is similarly very, very similar in the software space when we look at, say, operating system. Almost all our desktop or computer, laptop is either run by Microsoft or Apple iOS, right? Mainly Microsoft Windows is still the dominant part, and even in China, people cannot run away from it. They have to run Microsoft Windows or a version of it, either being edited and customized by their local software firms. And we have seen Google starting to come up with their Chrome OS, but that's not really picking up. But at least in the mobile space, it's also dominated by two firms, Apple and Google as well. Of course, we have our Linux and Android, which are two open source softwares. And Linux really have quite a dominance in the very tech, computer scientist community, and also on the networking operating system. So but they are a not-for-profit company and society, so it doesn't really affect, and anyone can really use the open source code from Linux. But on the cloud platform, which is becoming more and more dominant and more important, given that more and more of our things are being managed on the cloud, meaning that we don't have to have our own server in the office. Even for, say, consumer, we no longer need a lot of storage hard drive laying around. We can store everything online through some of these big guys. And today, the dominant guys are Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and of course in Asia Pacific, in China in particular, is Alibaba and Tencent with a much lower market share. So all these areas, even for a new sector like cloud computing, it's already consolidating, and only the big guys are there. And you can see that it's going to be starting to reach a point where the large will become larger, and especially in the tech space, where we're going to have only a few large player dominating the whole space, and it really become like either a duopoly or a oligopoly, right? And I can see that some of the areas like cloud, it is going to be innovating, and it's going to be the key engine to the next phase of innovation for technology, mainly on the AI space, because to have artificial intelligence and also machine learning, you need a lot of data, and who has more data than the cloud providers? So now all the cloud platforms, either Amazon AWS, Microsoft Azure, or Google Cloud, they all have their own tools within it to allow developers to start implementing more AI or machine learning tools into their data. And this will become a very sticky point. Once you already develop your work within that cloud platform, it's very, very hard for you to migrate away from it, and say your whole company or your whole research will be controlled by the cloud platform. So this is a very, very powerful thing that I think is slowly starting to pan out, and the big guys are really, really in a very, very dominant position right now. And maybe on a side note, who here has read of the book 1984, right, by George Orwell? It talks about the Big Brother state, right? We talk about the Big Brother state, and everything is being monitored. We kind of is already living in this world. Of course, those that's monitoring us is the company, but in China it's different, because the company has to adhere to the government. So it is common perception that most company would have to share data with the government. And 1984 is actually quite real in China, right? If you have just searched on YouTube on things like surveillance program in China, you read a lot about what's happening in Xinjiang. But it comes down to even basic things like if you are jaywalking on the street, their CCTV is able to have facial recognition and find out who you are, and they're going to be able to link you and find you directly on the spot because they have all your data and they know your WeChat or Alipay identity, and you're going to be notified and get a fine straight away. Right? So this is quite is quite scary if you think about it, but it is really already happening in some of the cities in China. And of course, we're going to talk about they are developing a lot of technology in autonomous driving and also other artificial intelligence. So these are government-backed initiative, and the government is going to let them innovate extremely fast so that they get a leap over the competition, which are US firms. Right. And on the US side, similarly, there's a lot of a lot of innovation happening in what I see is these three main sector, which is voice assistant. Like many of the software company are already going into hardware, say like your Amazon Alexa or your Google Home, and many of them are powered by video voice assistant, and I think US is still on the lead on that part. And if you, I'll share the link maybe later, where Google actually is able to create a voice assistant that is gonna kind of understand natural speak, and they can become like your call center support team. There's a video on the Google CEO calling their voice assistant and then ordering a pizza, and the voice assistant actually understand what he was trying to say. So this is quite innovative, I think, and has many implications in the future. And definitely these tech firms are leading the way. And of course, all these are built on their cloud platform. And we're going to see more and more innovation coming through. And I think we're just at the start of the transition into all this new technology in the next decade or so. Right? And all this backdrop links back to my thesis on Microsoft, because Microsoft kind of has really a big shift after the new CEO Satya Nadella came on board, right? And they kind of have a new refocus happening within the company, and then within the last few years, Microsoft kind of became cool again for the consumer market, and that's quite important. They have always been strong in the enterprise services for businesses, but they really been lacking in the consumer space, right? Because they never really had the cool factor. But I think that is also changing, and that could be a boost for their consumer businesses as well. And Microsoft is really, I would say, one of the only few tech company that has a very diversified revenue stream. If you think about it, a lot of tech company, they are still generating their revenue mainly from one source, but Microsoft is really one of the few that bucks the trend. Okay, so Microsoft is a huge and large cap company. I think that might turn off many investors, given that if you think that, well, it's already so big, can it continue to grow? Personally, I think yes. And we're going to go through why that is. But Microsoft has a market capitalization of 1.2 trillion, right? See, it is one of the few companies that is more than $1 trillion, I think, together with Apple and also sometimes with Amazon, depending on their stock price. It has a revenue of 130 billion, but from there they make about 41 billion last 12 months, which is a pretty good margin, about 30% margin. And now they're trading roughly about 30 times. and I still think that the growth for Microsoft is just far from over. Okay, let's look at their segment first. They break down their businesses in three main segments. Business computing, which is they have the Office, Microsoft Office, of course, which is bundled all together with Skype, Outlook, OneDrive, and they have more specific ERP system like SharePoint, Team. Dynamic is I think it competes with the SAP ERP system, and also LinkedIn. For most small businesses, for our company at least, say if we subscribe to the Microsoft Office 360, we already get the Office, the Skype, Outlook, and also OneDrive. So you already get, they bundle it together. And they have already successfully transitioned from, in the past, where they sell per license on per CD, to the point where it's now a subscription based on how many users you have in your office, and then you subscribe every year. I think they have successfully transitioned to that, and it actually make them become even more profitable and actually increase their revenue, because in the past people can use pirated softwares, but now because you need the constant update of their software, you have to subscribe, and it's quite hard for you to find pirated version of Microsoft Office if you need the continuous support. So it actually helps transition them into to fight piracy, and also improve their profitability. And of course, in their personal computing space, they also have Windows, where they sell to laptop manufacturers and PC manufacturers. They have their Xbox, which is their gaming division, their retail office, and also Bing, which is their search engine. Interestingly, Bing is actually profitable. When you look at their annual report, it's quite surprising that Bing is actually a profitable business for them. And right now, Bing is the search engine actually behind Yahoo. So if you go to Yahoo and use the search, it's actually powered by Bing. So that's quite fascinating. They have, of course, their Surface laptop line and desktop line, which is their hardware. It's growing very, very fast. And also they are moving more and more into gaming, which Mixer, which is their live streaming app, live streaming app. And they actually bought over Ninja, which is one of the most popular live streamer for games, like gaming live streamer. And if you just search on YouTube, or just Google, say, Ninja, or when the game that he plays, Fortnite, and you realize that this guy is very, very popular, and he actually his earning is reported to be like 10 to 20 million a year just by playing video games online. And not many of us might not realize is that gaming is actually a bigger industry than movies right now. Right? If you think about it, the largest movie that ever grossed is right now is Avengers Endgame, right? And it maybe grossed about 2.8 billion or 2.9 billion. But to make that movie, how much does it cost, and how many superstars need to be within Avengers Endgame to make that movie? But if on the flip side, the most popular game or the most profitable game right now is Fortnite. It earned about 2.4 billion last year alone. And if you talk about since the beginning, the game itself probably earned more than 3.3 plus billion since the beginning. And from there, you can already see that the most profitable game and the whole gaming industry as a whole is actually more profitable than the movie industry. And this is definitely a space that Microsoft really want to enter with both their Xbox and also now with their live streaming app with Mixer. Okay. And cloud, lastly. Cloud is their third segment, and Microsoft now is considered the second player, but they are growing much, much faster than the leader AWS, Amazon Web Services. In fact, in the last year poll or a survey by Goldman Sachs where they asked business user which is their favorite or which cloud provider are they most satisfied with, it actually ends up to be Microsoft Azure. So Microsoft, I think, although I don't use any of these cloud services, but from the feedback, it seems that Microsoft is doing a much better job than AWS and really gaining market share from it. But all three, be it AWS, Microsoft, or Google, are all growing. So the pie itself is still growing very, very fast. If you just look at AWS, it grew about 41% last year. So as a whole, the pie is still growing very, very fast. But Microsoft is both increasing its pie and also growing with the market. And if you just look at, when you read the annual report, when you look at the objective, Azure basically said that Microsoft wants Azure to be the world computer. They basically want Azure to power all the application in the world. They want Azure to be Skynet, right? If you're a Terminator fan. And right now they have close to roughly about 20+% market share. And that's huge when you talk about the global cloud businesses. Ex-China, of course. China mostly is still dominated by Alibaba, AliCloud. So even though that, they have three main segments right now, and each segment has profit of more than 12 billion a year. So every single segment is profitable and making roughly about 12 billion a year. And they're still growing very, very fast. The growth rate is roughly about 20 to 25% on each segment. And if you think about it, it should continue to grow because the world is becoming more and more connected. And the need right now is actually more and more devices coming on and not less. If you think back about 30 years ago, if you're a student in primary school, you don't need any laptop or desktop to go to school. You might not have a device. Maybe the school has just started to introduce, there's one computer lab where inside there's just one desktop for everybody to try it out. But today, schools are starting to implement that every student will need like a tablet, like an iPad, or at least a laptop to go to school. And homeworks, and I know Singapore is already implementing the homeworks are being sent through electronically, and you finish your assignment online. And you think about today, right now I'm having the live chat with you. I have roughly 4 devices on right now, right? My computer, my laptop on the side so that I can reply to your message. I have a phone to make sure that I don't miss any of the other notification. And I have an iPad to monitor the feed and make sure it's okay. And all these things is become the norm, and we cannot live back to the world where we have less and less device. But with more and more device, it means that many of the time Microsoft is behind the software for all these devices, and now even the hardware could be a Microsoft device as well. And everything is stored no longer in our devices, but also in the cloud. And as the data is being created faster and faster, there's need for more and more storage in the cloud. And from there, the company that really owns the data would almost sort of control the world. So just look at right now I have the latest financial report from Microsoft. Interestingly, you can see that their enterprise services is still very big. Their intelligent cloud is growing extremely fast, and all segment is actually growing. Even the personal computing segment is also growing, right? So their Windows and their Surface laptop. From there, you can see that all of them is also profitable right here. and growing as well. If you look at the segment in more details, this is what I'm talking about, search. So Bing is actually making 7.6 billion a year and actually growing. So this is something that really caught me off guard. And of course, their biggest acquisition till date, which is LinkedIn, I think after they bought it, they have been starting to implement more and more things into LinkedIn, and it really served the business crowd as a social network. So that one I'm also optimistic about, but of course it will never become as big as the entire Microsoft line, right? Okay, so at the beginning, I'd say before, I think Microsoft is the only company that sort of is a more diversified technology firm. Because if you think about it, say other tech firms, say if you're Facebook more than 90+% of their revenue is still coming from advertising. Google is also, even though they now changed to Alphabet and they say that they want to do many other things, predominantly they're still getting their revenue from search. Even Apple, right, a hardware software device company, they still get, I think, close to or more than 50% of their revenue coming from iPhone alone. So even for such a large tech company, which is another $1 trillion company, they are still predominantly coming from one revenue source. But Microsoft is the kind of the only one with have a very diversified and all profitable segment. And in that way, I kind of see it as a much safer company compared to the rest. And if we look at their price to earning comparison, let's just look at the top, say your Facebook, your Apple, and your Alphabet. These are their trading comparison right now, about 30 plus to 20-25 for Apple. And if you look at the bottom, your Amazon, your Alibaba, and Tencent, even the China companies, you can see that it's trading either slightly below or roughly in line with the peers. For Alibaba, it's trading at like 26.5 times, but that's actually because Alibaba has a one-off gain for last year. And if we adjust that, when I adjust that, the P is more like 50 times right now. So Microsoft is really, if you look at it and from its peer standpoint, it's not really that expensive at the moment. So from all that, I would say that Microsoft, among all our 10 stock that we talk about, Microsoft could actually be one of the safest ones. And my personal risk level for it is roughly about just 3, given that it is definitely on the mega trend that tech is still going to grow very, very fast. And it has a very diversified revenue stream. And it still doesn't really have, I would say, a relatively fair valuation at this point. So in my books, definitely I think that Microsoft is still one of the safer bet among our stock guide 2020. Okay, so that's it for the first part on Microsoft. If you have any question, do let me know. Write down on the chat below. Let me see if I can see your chat. Oops, I might need to refresh it a bit. Okay. Yes, now I see it. Okay, sorry about that. Just now my feet was hanging, so I wasn't able to see you guys. Okay, hello everybody. Good morning. I didn't see your good morning. Let me repeat that good morning to you guys. Jimmy, Winston, the Dark Knight. Glad that you're joining us. Eric and Kok Chong. Good morning. Okay, question is coming in. Karina is asking, so all the call center people will be out of job in the future. I don't know about that, but Google is definitely working on that, and try and search on YouTube. It's quite a fascinating technology that they have right now, so could be interesting. Yeah. Okay, and Karina is also asking, maybe you can select a gaming company for the next stock guide. I guess I have already recommended gaming company before, which is Tencent. And Tencent is the largest gaming company in the world right now. and they don't not just distribute, they publish, and they have a stake in many of the major gaming company right now. So I talk about the largest game right now, which is Fortnite, which is owned by this company called Epic Games. And Epic Games is actually, I think, 40% owned by Tencent. And Tencent invested in them. And apart from Tencent, I think the rest of the stock is still owned by the management team. So, no one has stake in Epic Games except Tencent. Yeah. So definitely take a look at Tencent again, if you are into gaming, right? Okay, Jimmy. So will Microsoft break up? I think we went past that point before. And if you remember, in the 90s, they have an antitrust issue, and Microsoft was nearly broken up. Right now, I don't think there's any risk on that. In fact, because of the technology war between US and China, I would say the politician is quite hesitant to break up any of the tech firm, even for a company like Facebook, right? They 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 say that they want to rein in on them, but no one really have quite a clue how to regulate them, and even breaking up them doesn't really solve much of the problem. And Microsoft today, if you're gonna break up Microsoft, I would argue it might actually be a it should have more value as a separate entity compared to when it's like a conglomerate now. Because if you have just Microsoft Azure, just cloud, which is growing, much faster than the whole company, it might even trade at a much higher multiple, and that's even better value for investors when they spin off everything. I don't think that's going to happen, but breaking up wouldn't be a bad thing for investors as well. Right? Sorry. Okay, so the Dark Knight is, I guess that's a comment on this company in Malaysia doing call center. And okay, is Syscom? Go, interesting. I have never know about that, but thanks for bringing that up. Right, if you guys have any more questions on Microsoft, do let me know. Let me try and just reset my link again just to make sure I don't miss any of your comments. Okay, very good. If there's no more question on Microsoft, I guess everyone is quite happy with it. We're gonna move on to our second stock, which is Facebook. All right. So Facebook, let me just start up on Facebook. If you haven't noticed, Facebook is not exactly the favorite company amongst many either users, the media definitely, and also government. Because of this guy. So it all happens between 2018. Oops. Okay, I just saw that somebody is asking question on Microsoft. Let me just pause for a while. I'm coming back. CC, hello, how are you? What could be the potential threat in Microsoft? I guess I would say the biggest threat for Microsoft is actually internal. So because they are such a big company right now, they, you can see just because they changed the CEO, it has such a big shift in the company. So although Satya Nadella is still very young and he might run it for many years, but if there's some shake-up in the management, the direction of the company might change, and that could potentially, change the whole ship. So I would say that is the biggest risk. I think apart from that, of course, they are lacking behind in the mobile operating system. So for mobile or tablet, they completely lost the game. They are not the de facto operating system on it. and Microsoft is already starting to make Microsoft phones that's running on Android. So they kind of give up on that, fighting that. They realize they cannot compete, and they just want to be one of the service provider within the ecosystem. But if we have seen how strong they are in Windows and even Microsoft Office, owning that whole ecosystem is much more valuable. So they really lost out on that game. But the next frontier right now is on Internet of Things and also the cloud. It kind of joins together, because if you owns the cloud, and then if more of the Internet of Things run through Azure, and then the operating system might be run on Microsoft as well. So I guess the first bet for them is to really build up the cloud services and then attack the IoT ecosystem and become the de facto operating system for Internet of Things. So that's something they are looking at, right? Alvin is asking, how does the call center get disrupted? So I think this Karina is commenting on the short story that I shared on how Google has already developed a voice assistant that kind of understand our natural speak, and you can actually have a chat with the voice assistant, and or say things like ordering pizza and other things like that, make appointment. So that could be a new way that can replace call center. But of course, at the moment, I think there's still a long way to go. Maybe on specific cases they are able to do that, but it's also a demo day, so of course they're gonna show the best demonstration that they can, right? Okay, cool. Sorry for missing your question, Cici. Now we can get back to what we're talking about, Facebook. And the problem for Facebook really started a few years ago in 2018, where they have a data leak from this company called Cambridge Analytica. And Cambridge Analytica was actually using their data to help political parties kind of nudge voters in one direction or the other. At that time, it was not seen as anything illegal, but of course, Facebook realized that they actually take the data and they kind of not sold the data, but they use it for other clients as well. So Facebook shut them down, but didn't release the information that their data has been leaked, and they kind of try and cover it up. And then so until 2018, it was known to the media that such an incident happened, and all the big hoo-ha happened, and people start questioning about, I guess, the integrity of Facebook, and also how also the Russian government was trying to intervene in the US election. And that became a big issue, especially for the US government. Before that, actually, there's already a lot of actors using Facebook to manipulate election. But it's just not the US government, so the US government doesn't care, right? Cambridge Analytica actually helped a lot of government around the world to sort of sway votes for their client. And the Brexit was partly attributed to Cambridge Analytica. Even in our region, I think not the last election, but the election before that in Malaysia was also being run by Cambridge Analytica on Facebook. So this has been happening for many years, but only recently it happened to the US government, and that's why all the concerns now is coming online to Facebook. And they kind of went through a crisis in 2018 and 2019. And even until today, two main stakeholders still doesn't like them, mainly the government and the media. right? The government is starting to see that just how powerful Facebook can be, from being used as a tool to influence election, or even for to be used by terrorists, spreading propaganda and coordinating attacks. And there's a real talk right now to be thinking that maybe Facebook should be regulated. And even Mark Zuckerberg has no real resistance that Facebook should not be regulated, right? He mentioned a few times in his talk that, he will definitely work with the government if they want to regulate Facebook, and look at what kind of regulation there should be. And secondly, another stakeholder that don't really like Facebook is the media world, especially the traditional media. Right, the traditional media don't really like Facebook because Facebook sort of disrupted their business model. In the past, when we read newspaper, or even we read paper online, doesn't matter, the newspaper is able to get advertising dollar directly. So the client, if you want to advertise through the newspaper, you go and find the newspaper and advertise through them. But now with Facebook, because everything is aggregated from Facebook, media is becoming commoditized, right? We can read media from New York Times, we can read from anywhere. We don't have to read our local news. And we don't advertise through the newspaper anymore. We can just advertise through Facebook, tagging on to people who maybe read New York Times or the Wall Street journals. So there's a huge negative impact on their earnings, and it's a power struggle for them. And that's why the media continue to always, I guess, try to put Facebook in a bad light, because it's really bad for their business. But in a way, they cannot run away from it as well, because they still need Facebook to be there for their distribution point. So more like a love-hate relationship for them. But the global trend itself is definitely on the side of Facebook. Because if we think about that, right now, everything happens on the internet. Even when I was having a coffee with my wife, and every topic that we bring up, we have to do a search, or we have to find something. I say, I saw this on Facebook, and you have to bring out your phone and then share that article with the person standing right beside you, right? And so it is a trend that's not going away. If you go to, say, your kids' concert and everything, you will see that all the parents are putting up their phone to video their kids, looking at their kids through their phone. Although some of their phone are in HD, but they can look at the kids in 3D right in front of them. But this is just the way that we are living our life right now, and it's not going to change. It's almost like in the past, where we first tasted electricity, when the society first shifted from burning candles at night to with a flick of a switch, you get electricity. We're never going back to fire. Right? We're not going to say, I don't want to use electricity, is harming the environment, I'm going to go back to candle. It's never going to be the case. And even till today, advertising on social media is still not that big, right? It's still growing extremely fast. And according to some statistic platform, social media marketing is still expected to grow about 25 to 30% a year for the next few years. And not just in terms of the number of people that you can advertise to, but also the ad spending for the people. As people become wealthier, number one, and as people become more comfortable spending things online, then the ad spending per user is going to grow up as well. If we just look at the entire advertising space, I'm sorry, I only have data right now for 2018, because the data for 2019 is not out yet. But if you just look at that, a big part of the global advertising spending is still on traditional media. You have your television, your newspaper, your radio, even your cinema or your outdoor. All these are, I would say, not digital spending and on brick and mortar advertising or traditional advertising avenue. Whereas digital, be it your search or be it your social media, everything say digital is only about 38%. But if we think about where is our attention right now, mainly, in our daily life, we spend on average about 3 to 4 hours on our phone. 3 to 4 hours on our phone. Admittedly, I spend more than that because I track it from my phone and I realize I spend more time on my phone than the average 3 to 4 hours. But from that 3 to 4 hours, from Facebook annual report, actually close to an hour, people are spending on Facebook assets, be it your WhatsApp, your Facebook, your Instagram. So the attention span of most people actually is on our mobile phone today, and in particular in Facebook, right? So even if the company is facing some huge challenges, the recent stock decline has presented some opportunity, and of course the stock has recovered. But even so, I think the best is yet to come. Even until today, Facebook has a market cap of about 600 billion. They make about 66 billion last 12 months and a net income of 18 billion, which is, I would say, a depressed earnings, because after the crisis, they really spent a lot more to improve their transparency, their supervision of content on their website, and just invested a lot more on their infrastructure. So they're spending a lot, and that's why their earnings was depressed. Before last year, they were earning 20 plus billion and still growing. So the valuation is about 35 times right now. But I would still think the growth is still far from over. Okay, so Facebook is an interesting company because today there are about 6 social media app or social app that has more than 1 billion user. And from that 6, Facebook actually owns 4 of them. They are Facebook, their Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook Messenger. Maybe Facebook Messenger is a little bit is kind of a cheating app, because when I have Facebook, they just automatically give me a Facebook Messenger account even though I don't want it. So, but still, they have more than 1 billion active user on all these 4 platforms. And if you guys know the other 2, do write it down on the live chat below, which are the other $2 billion app that we are using. Okay. And from there, from the 4 big app, they have sort of an unmatched advertising platform, because they have a very unique advantage over traditional media, which is they know their target audience. Okay. Because of the constant sharing that we are doing on their app, Facebook have very, very strong data about us. And the advertisers would really prefer that, right? The advertiser would really like a much better targeted campaign that they can have, compared to, say, if I advertise in a newspaper and it's just a blast, and I don't even know how is the effectiveness of the advertising. For us, for our business, I would say we almost 100% advertise mainly on Facebook only, because it's much low cost and there's a high feedback data. Once I do a campaign, I know how well it's being managed, how well people are responding to it, and if it's not working, I can change it straight away, and I can sort of test the market with as low as just a few bucks to just test it out. Whereas if you talk about, if I want to do advertisement on the radio or the newspaper, how much is it gonna cost? And it's definitely showing from their revenue and income, because Facebook has been growing their revenue and net income since we have data back to 2010 at the rate about 42% a year for their revenue and about 47% a year for their net income. Of course, like I said, they hit some road bump in 2018. It might take a while for them to regain that growth, but definitely I am quite optimistic that they are able to regain that growth. And from their net income, they are also free cash flow positive, because if you think about it, they're just selling ad space. There's not much huge capex that they need to put in comparison to the revenue that they're getting. So this company is highly liquid, highly strong in their balance sheet. Okay, so let's look at some of the growth potential that we can expect from the company. Even until today, most of the revenue still coming from their Facebook app itself, so advertisement on Facebook itself. But Instagram is seeing a huge growth. Back in 2017, it's already 10% of revenue and it's growing much faster than Facebook. I haven't seen the most latest number in 2019, but I expect it should be around 15 to 20% of their entire revenue right now. And Facebook, the usage time of Instagram is definitely much more than Facebook. And they're going to monetize also on Facebook Messenger and also WhatsApp. Now only on the stories, but more things should come, right? They're gonna so the big shift to stories, but they're gonna start more and more focusing on videos as well. So they are trying on Facebook Watch and also IGTV, where it allows you to watch just video much longer. Mainly because maybe they see the potential of YouTube and how profitable it is, and they're trying to get into that pie as well. Okay, and they're also building tools around Facebook. Where these are sort of experimental. I think they are always testing things, but they recently launched Facebook matchmaking or jobs. Of course, the marketplace, now you can buy and sell things on Facebook. It's almost like a carousel within Facebook. And also they have a workspace social media for internal companies, where you have a large company where you can just use workspace, where it becomes a bulletin board for your company. Don't know how well that is being received, but these are some of the experiments they are trying. And of course, they acquired Oculus Rift, which is VR and AR, which Mark Zuckerberg think that is this going to be the next phase of interaction online, and he's very optimistic about that. I'm not very sure about that, but it kind of shows that the company is very long-term orientated. They're not looking at what's popular now and try to monetize and maximize the profit for right now, but they're also investing in, say, the next 10 years, next 20 years, what's going to be the trend next 10 to 20 years, and they're starting to experiment and run with that. Okay, so can Facebook really be replaced? We talk about, people always have the sense that social media or the tech scene, or it's just a website. The switching cost is not that high. It might be a trend or a fad, but Facebook has been around for many years, for more than a decade now, and there are about 2.6 billion active users across their platform. I think they are more than just a social media platform. They are sort of becoming like the operating system for our digital identity, right? Because Facebook is sort of the only ones that we use our real identity online. Other social media, even for YouTube, I don't have to use my real name on YouTube. I can have my synonym account, or if you play Reddit, all these are anonymous platform. But Facebook sort of is one of the few real world identity platforms out there, and they become our digital identity. And once this platform reach scale where almost everybody is on one of their platforms, it's very hard to replace, because I cannot say that I'm gonna switch. But if I switch to another platform and none of my friends or family is within that ecosystem, is not that fun, right? I tried downloading, say, Snapchat and things like that to just understand what are all these competition about. But the fact is, not many people here, at least in Singapore or Malaysia, use Snapchat. And so even if I download the app, it's not going to be fun for me, because none of my friends are on it. And so I think Facebook has really reached a point where they are the de facto sort of platform for all of us, and it's not so easy for us to replace it, or a new company to come and replace it. And another question we kind of have is Facebook and Tencent just similar, right? Are they similar, or in what way? How I see it is, if we look at the top messaging app across country right now in the world, it's quite interesting. We have, of course, our part of the world is WhatsApp. North America is mostly using Facebook Messenger. And you can see the blue are all Facebook Messenger. And in China, of course, they're different, which is WeChat. And they have Line for Japan. I'm not sure why Thailand has Facebook Messenger, but I think Thailand, most people use Line as well. So maybe they are on par with each other. So you can see that in terms of messaging app, these are already quite consolidated. The whole world is mainly using one or two messaging app. But what's different about Tencent, it is more than just a social media app. It is like a tech conglomerate with very, very diverse business, from social, your WeChat, to gaming, to video, to music, to e-commerce, right? They even have a fintech arm, and also investment. They invest in a lot of companies. So they're sort of the kind of like a tech conglomerate within China. And it just so happens that the most, I guess, popular or prominent part of their business is WeChat. And people just assume that it is a social media firm. But in fact, it is more like a conglomerate. But everything is China focused. Everything is, they still generate most of the income from China. Whereas Facebook, on the other hand, is very focused in its product. So it's a social media messaging product, but it is very diversified across geographical markets. So almost the rest of the world, we would be using Facebook assets, but only just one or two of their assets. So that's the key difference between what's Tencent and Facebook, which is one is country focused but diversified in industry and products. But Facebook is very concentrated in products and services, but diversifying across different markets. And right now, interestingly, we are seeing that Facebook is planning or starting to copy Tencent. This is sort of the first major instance where we are seeing Western tech firm starting to copy Chinese tech firm. And WeChat in particular, if you use WeChat, they have a lot of more function other than their social media and messaging, right? Especially if you're a Chinese user in China, you can have games, payment, even a lot of offline to online transaction you can go through. You can buy insurance, you can buy a movie ticket, all on WeChat. And Facebook is going that direction. They are trying hard, but because they are in so many different markets, it's hard for them to have a proper payment gateway where maybe everything is on US dollars and things like that, and they have to work through regulation in every country. So that's why they're trying to circumvent that through their Libra program by creating a cryptocurrency. They have started it, but it might not be taking off very very aggressively. So that's have to be seen. But they're definitely already starting WhatsApp payment in India. They have been testing that for a long time in India, where you can actually send payment through WhatsApp if you're in the India market. So both payment testing in India and also from their Facebook app, I think from in Instagram and Facebook in the US. So it'd be good to see if they can sort of emulate WeChat in these two major markets that they're testing. And of course in games, so for casual games, Messenger, they are quite strong and would continue. I think that will continue to be a major part, and they want to grow that gaming part for Facebook Messenger as well. Okay, so if we look at the much bigger picture right now, so what is Facebook? What I see is a fast growing company, and they have a management that you might question their integrity, but highly flexible and very aggressive in growing, and they still have a very huge addressable market and huge untapped potential, be it that they can transition from just pure advertising into multiple services like your WeChat. And even until today, when they have rallied back in 2019 and their stock price, I still think that their valuation right now is quite fair for investor. But of course, it's always going to be risk. So what could go wrong? What could go wrong is really the government. Maybe more government regulation, and that might increase, especially because it's going to be affecting the political system and their election. They're going to be very worried, and they might try to regulate that more. That could add some cost to it. But on the flip side, I also think that could be potentially good for Facebook, because having regulation, it means that it increases the barrier of entry. So other social media platforms might find it hard to compete with Facebook if they are being regulated. It's sort of like when the new media came out, television came out. At the beginning, it might not fully be regulated, but after a while it become regulated. But then you just end up having a few big networks that control the whole ecosystem, because the barrier of entry is so high. It's not so easy to create a new television network because of regulation. So if there's regulation happening to Facebook, that could be a potential increase of barrier entry for other competitors as well. What I'm more worried about is actually taxation. So given the high profitability of all these tech firms, and US government being so in debt and running deficit every single year, they're always looking for a way to increase their tax revenue. And they might come up with some excuses just to look for ways to either punish or increase the tax revenue for all these tech company, and Facebook in particular. And if that's the case, if you just increase taxation for this tech company, that could really impact their profit, right? There's no way around it. If you get taxed more, it means less profit for shareholders. So that's the main risk that I'm quite worried about. But other than that, I think they're still quite okay. And of course, maybe internationally, especially in Southeast Asia, there's going to be more competition. Especially in Southeast Asia here, we are quite agnostic when it comes to where the app is coming from. If you're in the US, maybe you are more worried if it's a Chinese app and you don't want to use a Chinese app. But over here, I don't think we have that issue. Be it a Chinese app or a US app, doesn't matter. The US government or the Chinese government can look at what I want to say. I'm just a small guy here in Singapore. It doesn't matter. So there's going to be more competition in more international market. But apart from that, in their traditional market, they'll be quite strong. And it's very hard for new competition to come in. So this is a chart for Facebook since 2019. they have been rallying, and but I think it's still far from over, from reaching their full potential. So definitely worth a look for Facebook. Risk level, I think the worst has passed for Facebook. I would say their risk level is maybe about 5 right now, because one of the main risks that I'm more worried about is really the US government and taxation. So I think they are in a pretty good shape right now. And after a lot of the old management has left, the Instagram founder and the WhatsApp founder has all left, and now I guess Mark Zuckerberg really has control over the entire Facebook, and in that way, less competition within the company, and they can move forward right now. Okay, so that's it for Facebook. If you have any question on Facebook, it's not really the first time we talk about Facebook. I have been talking about Facebook for quite some time. But if you have any question on Facebook, do let me know. Let me try to reset my feed. Sorry, my feed is not running as smoothly as yesterday, so I might miss out some of your question. But if you have any question on Facebook, do let me know. Okay, let me check. No, everybody's very good on Facebook. Let me double check. And for that, cool. Okay. Dark Knight is sharing your Facebook ads. So Facebook ads is it's gonna be different for everybody, and it really depends on what you're viewing. Not just on Facebook, even on the web, because Facebook has something called the Facebook Pixel, where they allow other website to put in that tracking into their website, and then retargeting the audience into Facebook. So if you visit, say, if you go to, say, if you read New York Times today, just from Google, and then you'll realize that when you go to Facebook, Facebook will be advertising some New York Times articles for you. So so that's how they do it. They really have, they track you throughout the web, so not just on Facebook. Okay, CC is saying, if I only have one war chest to deploy, which one do you recommend? If you're only going to buy one stock, I think you should look at, if you like the tech sector, as a whole, maybe you can look at the Nasdaq ETF, right? Which is QQQ. The ticker is QQQ, is the ETF listed for Nasdaq index, and Nasdaq has most of the tech firm listed there. I think their main position is still going to be like Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, and Google. So to have a more diversified one, and if you can only buy just one stock, to make sure that your portfolio is more diversified, you might want to look at that ETF QQQ. Okay, Karina is asking, if Facebook were to diversify their revenue from ads, what will be the second revenue coming from? And you commented whether it is going to be e-commerce for Instagram. I'm a bit disappointed that they're moving quite slow with e-commerce on Instagram. You can already see that there's a real demand, not just on Instagram, even for Facebook. There's a lot of shopping going on Facebook and Instagram. And Facebook basically just need to streamline that whole process and make us be able to check out and buy directly within the app. Maybe they're doing that for the US market, and for us here, maybe we're too small a market that we're gonna get the feature last. I don't know what they're experimenting in the US, but I think they should really move much faster. And if they move and implement the e-commerce aspect, I think that will be a huge revenue boost for the company, and especially from Instagram. And yeah, I think e-commerce, if done successfully, can be a next phase for them. And to them, if I'm Facebook, I don't know. I'm not speaking for Mark Zuckerberg, but if I'm Facebook, I would rather want to move towards the e-commerce industry, because that's just about buying and selling, about consumerism. Whereas advertising, you touch on very touchy subject like election advertising, uh, and we talk about media. It's very talking about ideological or terrorists trying to spread propaganda and things like that. It becomes a very touchy subject. Whereas if I focus on e-commerce, all you're worried about is buying and selling things. It's not so controversial. So I hope they move a little bit faster on that end. Yeah. Okay. Alvin is asking how to understand your risk classification. Oh, okay. Maybe I explained a little bit on that, because I explained it yesterday. You might have missed yesterday topic. So risk is just I would say it's a subjective assessment on our part. What we want to highlight is whether this company, you can think of it as slightly more risky or slightly less risky as a company business standpoint. And so one is very, very safe. We'll say as safe as your fixed deposit or your treasury bonds, right? Is the safest that you can get. And then 10 might be if you're buying on very speculative asset like Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency. That's not to say that a higher risk company means that we should not buy, or we should only buy the lower risk company. That's not what I'm saying, but just that you have to understand everything in the perspective of your own portfolio. So if your portfolio is already very diversified and mostly say on income stocks, and you're quite comfortable with them, and very boring companies that they are very, very sustainable every single year, then adding something more speculative that higher in risk but has a higher potential of growth, that might be fine. So it's just a way for you to look at, to sort of understand whether you want to how much you want to bet on the portfolio standpoint. As a rule of thumb, maybe a safer company is something that I might be comfortable investing a little bit more in terms of monetarily, and a riskier company might be something that I try to limit how much I invest in it. That's basically it. Okay. CC is asking whether the Nasdaq Index QQQ can be bought from FSN1. So FSN1 is a brokerage here in Singapore. It's a discount brokerage here in Singapore. As a disclosure, we actually work with them sometimes. And yes, you can definitely buy, because it's considered like a US stock. So you can buy directly from any brokerage that have access to US market. Okay. Maggie is asking, I have just started investing in ETF on IG, but only offers CFDs. Oh, okay. So to be honest, I don't know much about CFD, which is but it is not really, when you're buying CFD, you're not really buying the stock. You're just buying a derivative contract, either with a counterparty or with IG, which bet on the stock. So they give you leverage. So to me, it's definitely much riskier, and you have to pay, of course, margin financing by holding that stock as well, because they give you margin, you have to pay back interest as well. So I wouldn't say that these are things that you use to hold something for the long term. But if you want to trade it, definitely that's possible. But always manage your risk, right? You can have a trading platform, you can have a trading account but you might want to make sure you manage the risk, because when for a margin account, when you lose money, sometimes you can lose more than what you have within the account. So that's something that you need to be aware of. Okay. The Dark Knight, yes. Facebook e-commerce is already in Vietnam. Wow. So that's very impressive. Hopefully they come to our market as well. I understand we are much smaller market for Facebook. They might want to concentrate more on the bigger markets, but hopefully it comes to us as well, so we can test it out and see whether it's useful, and investor might get a better sense of how well it is. But even if you don't get a sense of the product, sometimes what I do is you just look for reviews online. There's tons of reviews on the features on tech companies, or even for Square. Right? Yesterday, Junpad was sharing his thesis for Square. If you just search online on the review on how other users in the US are using Square and what they like it, what they don't like about it, you get a sense of how well the product or the services is. So just search online. There's more than enough information out there. Okay. Right. CC is commenting also to the e-commerce platform for Facebook in Vietnam, and it seems that it's been doing very well. Thanks for the information. In Singapore, so e-commerce right now, I think in Singapore and Malaysia, mostly dominated by Lazada and Shopee, mostly backed by the Chinese company, right? Lazada is backed by Alibaba, Shopee is backed by Sea Inc., which Sea Inc. is also an investee company of Tencent, right? What else do we have? Karina is also making the comment that there's already a marketplace. In fact, I have buy things before on Facebook Marketplace, but it's really like Carousel. If you're here in Singapore or Malaysia, Carousel is just a listing. So you see it, you message the seller, and then you find a place where you meet, and then you exchange goods physically. So it's not ideal. And it's just, if I'm buying things online, which I do say on Lazada, on Shopee, the frequency of me buying through Lazada will be much more than the frequency of me buying through Facebook Marketplace, just because I have to go and meet the person, and and there's no way around it, because I don't dare to transfer my money to him first, and then hopefully he send the thing to me. Whereas if you have a proper platform like Lazada, I pay. If the product doesn't come or is not up to my standard, I can request for a refund or cancellation. There's no problem. So there's no risk to me. So Facebook really need to figure that out. All right. Very good. So that's the first part of our presentation. Oops, we ran a little bit over again. Sorry about that. But we'll go through another workshop, which is now on. Let me just on it up. Which is now on the live of Warren Buffett. Okay. I'm sorry if we have to run a little bit over time and eat up to your lunchtime. But I think this presentation is going to be beneficial for us, and so I'm not going to rush through it. If you have to be at other places, of course, do leave, no problem. All the recording will be recorded, and so you'll still be able to see it through our event page, including the presentation. I'll upload it to the material files later after the presentation. Okay? So, understanding Warren Buffett. So, this guy is an interesting guy. The picture behind on his desk, I think, is his father, Howard Buffett, which I guess he has a better relationship with his father than his mother. and he has always looked up to his father. But Warren Buffett has really, really been a very, very fascinating guy since young. And one of my favorite quotes from him is, risk come from not knowing what you're doing. So something might be risky, just like if we have never invested in the stock market. Investing in the stock market, the idea of investing in the stock market might be risky, but if you start to understand it, you realize that it can be less risky, and there's ways to do it in a safe manner. But interestingly, also, you realize that the more you know, the less you know. So even until today, I'm still learning a lot about investing. I definitely has still a long way to go to learn, and I continue to make a lot of mistake in investing again and again, sometimes repeating my mistake. But it is interesting to realize that there's so much to learn within the stock market, right? And even until today, I think the stock market is still one of the best place for us to get rich in a sustainable manner. Meaning that, there's many people who can strike a lottery and become rich. There's gonna be people who go to a casino and bet big on something and came out rich. They can even speculate. You might buy a stock or a property that you don't really know about, and then somehow you make money from it. Certainly, I have experienced such a thing. But how sustainable is that kind of wealth creation? You can speculate on something and you make money once, twice, but if you're gonna do it for the rest of your life, sooner or later you are going to hit a roadblock and you're going to fall off a cliff. I always enjoy studying like people who are successful in life and how they reach it. And Warren Buffett definitely one of them, right? So these are his resources. You can click on the links to look at them later when I upload it. So basically, the Berkshire Hathaway website, where you can see all his chairman's letters or his annual report, even before he joined and become the chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, he writes actively annually to his fund for Buffett Partnership, and you can still have the archive here. And also, if you want to view his current portfolio right now, there's websites that constantly track his portfolio, and you'll be able to track it there. Okay, so who is Buffett? So sorry, the picture is not working here, but it's okay. So Buffett, if you do not know, he is one of the most famous investor in the world. If you're into value investing, I'm sure you might have heard of him. And he basically make all his wealth through the stock market. And today he has a net worth close to 90 billion. And that's after giving away close to, I think, more than 20 billion of stocks of his wealth to various charity. I think to most is to the Bill and Gates Melinda Foundation, Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation. And his wealth continues to climb. He is actually born in Omaha, Nebraska. So if you are a shareholder of Berkshire, you can attend the annual meeting or annual general meeting of Berkshire Hathaway, and it's held in Omaha. If you have the chance, maybe you can visit. I've only been there once, and Omaha as a city is nothing much, to be honest. I guess the only real attraction is really Warren Buffett himself. His dad is a businessman who owns a stock brokerage firm, a small one, and also a politician. He has been a senator before, and from his dad business, that's how he got introduced to the world of stocks. He actually bought his first stock at the age of 11. So when when he was 11, he made an investment buying the share called City Service Preferred. I don't know what the company is, but the story goes that he bought it at $38 per share. After he bought it, the stock dropped to 27. But then when the stock finally recovered back to 40, he quickly sold off his share for a small profit. Be it, you can see that he's still very new to investing, and it's sort of this trade kind of show that he's just basically trading and speculating. The share price dropped, and then it went back up to 40. He quickly sold for a small profit, but he soon regretted it because City Service shot up to more than $200 per share after that. So I guess that's his first lesson, that in investing you kind of have to be patient a little bit if you buy the right company. And he's not only just an investor throughout his life, he is also a businessman. By the age of 13, he has been running his own business, first as a paper route newspaper boy. And he also sell his own horse racing tip sheet. I don't know, maybe there's a common entrepreneur route for youngsters here, there in the US when he was young. So that's what he did. But in the 1942, his father actually got elected to the House of Representatives. So they actually moved to Virginia from Omaha, Nebraska, and he studied in Washington D.C. for a while. From during his high school day, he also went into venture with a friend where they buy used pinball machine, and then repair it, and then they install it into barbershop, and then they share the profit with the shop owner. And very soon he really makes quite a number of machines, have a different location, and he sold the business for a few $1,000s. And a few $1,000s at that time would be equivalent to maybe 20,000-30,000 today's money, which is a very, very good sum for a high school kid. So he has always been business smart as well than just an investor. So after World War II in 1947, when he graduated, he has already quite a big sum of saving from selling his business and also from his newspaper route. Legend has it he has already made about $5,000-$6,000 of saving from that. That is maybe equivalent to 40,000-50,000 of savings today. That's quite a lot. And his father really urged him to go into university, but in fact at the time he has no plans to go to university. But at the end he listened to his father. He went to the University of Pennsylvania, but he only stayed there for 2 years because he feel that he's smarter than his professor. So he dropped out of school, saying that he's already smarter than the professor. There's no need for him to study there. And he just returned home to Omaha and then studied in the University of Nebraska for a while. After he graduated, he worked with his father, and his father also continued to persuade him for further studies, and he tried to apply for Harvard at the time, Harvard Business School, but they rejected him. So that's when he got to find out about the Columbia Business School, where Benjamin Graham was teaching. And Benjamin Graham was sort of his mentor, and he really looked up to him. He is one of the key influence of Warren Buffett, and also a key influence to all value investor. So every time when someone first come in contact of value investing and they learn about value investing, even though it might be from Warren Buffett, more often than not, they're talking about the style that Benjamin Graham practices, which is deep value investing, looking for very, very cheap stock. And that's the main style of Benjamin Graham, looking for cheap stock. And that's because when he was investing, it was during the Great Depression. And there's many stock that's trading very, very cheaply, below their cash value, below their net asset value. And That's how he made his money at that time. He also published two major books about investing. One is called The Intelligent Investor and also Security Analysis. I guess the most famous concept that he has is the concept of Mr. Market, where if you invest in the stock market, always see the stock price and stock ticker as a real person called Mr. Market, and you're trading with him. He's always there to give you a quote every day, every second of the waking hours of when the market is open. And he's always looking, do you want to buy my stock? Do you want to sell my stock? Do you want to buy my stock? Do you want to sell my stock? And it is up to us. We don't have to be influenced by him. It's up to us whether to take his offer or not. So that's really the concept of Mr. Market. And also Ben Graham is a director of this company called Geico, which is an insurance company, an automotive insurance company in Washington, D.C. And when Buffett was young, he remembered reading a magazine talking about this company, and he realized that the chairman for this company was actually Benjamin Graham. So he got very excited and he just hopped a train to Washington, D.C. The story goes that he just took a train there to the headquarters without any appointment, and it was a Sunday, so the door was locked. So Buffett just stand at the door and keep knocking until someone opened the door for him. And he asked whether anyone is in the building. And luck has it that there is a person there. And Warren just went up to chat with him for hours, about the business, about how they make money and how the business is run. The person turns out to be one of their financial vice president of the company. And Buffett really fall in love with the company, which, if you follow his history, he actually bought the entire Geico company with Berkshire at the later stage. Okay, now going back that he went to Columbia Business School to study, and he was, of course, he was very smart, and he ended up being the top student in Benjamin Graham classes. And after he graduated, he really wanted to work for Benjamin Graham, and he even offered to work for free. But Benjamin Graham turned him down because at the time, there's still a lot of prejudice against Jewish people. And Benjamin Graham, being Jewish, wanted to hold his spot for Jewish people who are not able to find job outside in New York. So Warren was not Jewish and he cannot change that. So he was not hired. So he went back to work for his father. And at the time, I think his investment was still not super great. And he was still not the legendary stock picker at the time. So he has to supplement that income by becoming a part-time teacher in the University of Omaha. That was also the time where he got married at the age of 22. But after a few years, Benjamin Graham actually called him up and say he's ready to have him come on board to work for him in New York. So the family moved to New York. So this is how Buffett find investment in the past, through the Moody's manual. So this is like a stock fact sheet for the company. You can see that they just introduced what the company does, what's the news about the company, some financials about the companies, and he just basically flipped them through every single day. We don't do it now because we have the internet and we can screen for stocks, and there's website with a huge amount of data about each company. So he basically just flipped through one by one and find interesting companies. And he really performed well for Benjamin Graham during that time. His wealth grew from like 10,000-20,000 to more than 100,000+ by the end of 1950s. And Benjamin Graham decided to retire and he closed down his fund. So Warren Buffett was out of a job and he moved back to Nebraska. And when he came back, he decided to become a fund manager himself. So he started his own fund, not really in a real regulated fund sort of way, but just as a private company. And he round up people like his friends and family, and he raised about 100,000, and he start investing. So in equivalent terms, maybe today is like I find a few friends and then we set up a private limited or we set up a LLP together, and I manage their investment for them. That could be a similar case for him at that time. So it's not really a regulated fund, but rather just a co-investment vehicle that he bring together with his friends and family. But he did very, very well. Within 1 or 2 years, that money actually tripled to 300,000, and he started raising more and more money, and more people started to see that he is a great investor and started investing in him. By 1962, just 6 years, his partnership grew to a capital of more than 7 million from 100,000 at the beginning. And his personal stake become about 1 million. So by the age of 32, he became a millionaire. And how he charged his partnership is very interesting. He don't charge a net fee, but he charged a 25% fee on the profit that is above 4%. So he sort of promised that he will make at least 4% for his investors, and anything above 4%, he will take a 25% cut of it. It's not a very common structure for fund manager now. Today, most of the fund managers, if you invest in fund managers, most of them will have a flat fee, maybe about 1%. It used to be 2%, but it's getting more competitive now, maybe about 1%. And then they will charge another percentage on performance fee, like a 10 to 20% on profit. Definitely no hurdle rate, right? So anything above zero, they're going to charge you a fee. So it turns out very expensive for investor. It's also very expensive for Buffett investor, but of course, because he's such a good investor, everybody make money. So nobody is really complaining. By the end of 1962, he actually have more than 90 limited partners. So he has more than 90 investors around. And it is also during that time he met this guy called Charlie Munger, who become his investment partner for life. And Munger is also a fascinating character. Maybe we'll talk more about him in the future. He's actually one of my favorite investor of all time. And but 10 years after having that partnership, having been run a fund, he decided to consolidate everything. So by the mid-1960s, he consolidated everything into a proper fund called the Buffett Partnership, and he slowly grew his wealth after that. Okay, and he grew it until I think the 1969, where he feel that the market is extremely high, and he basically said, I'm going to go retire, I'm going to liquidate everything back to all his shareholders. It was in the mid-1960s also where he come across this company called Berkshire Hathaway. Berkshire Hathaway, even during his fund manager time, he was already buying it, and he bought it so much that he become the chairman of the company from the fund. And I think in 1970, when he liquidated the fund, he made himself chairman of Berkshire Hathaway. The story goes that after he liquidated his fund, he tried to sell off Berkshire as well. And the management actually wanted to buy back his share, and they offered $11.50. But verbally lah. So, but when the real offer came, it was $11.38, like 38 lah. And Buffett was angered by that, right? And this is one of the few examples that he actually lose his cool. When we think of Buffett, he's like almost robotic and very, very logical in the thinking. And this is one of the few examples that he actually become angry and acted emotionally. So instead of selling to the company, he buy more shares. He buy more shares until that he became the main shareholders, and he kicked out all the management and make himself chairman, right? And he took control of the company. And then now he took control of the company, and he realized, oh my God, he has a dying company on his hand. And so he started to consolidated his businesses within Berkshire Hathaway, and he put in the rest of the company that he also owned majority. One is an insurance company called National Indemnity, and also later on he invested in this company called See's Candy, which provided the guiding principle of how Buffett continued to invest starting from this stage on, because at the past he still invests mainly the Benjamin Graham style, buying very very cheap stock and then hoping that it run up and then he sell it off. So this is a big shift when he moved from being a deep value investor into an investor who focusing on buying very very high quality business that continue to grow year in and year out. Even until today, he bought See's Candy in the 1960s, 1970s. Until today, he still owns the company, and the company continued to be very, very profitable for him. But what happens during that time also in the 60s is, because he was running a fund and he was also investing personally, some of his investment he make personally or some of the investment he make together with Charlie Munger. So there's a lot of interweb of companies. Some he owns with his fund, some he owns personally, some he owns with Munger through their own investment fund. So they end up getting investigated by SEC for maybe possibility of manipulation of shares. But of course they didn't really recommend him a lot. I think he got a small fine, but he ended up restructuring everything. So that is the time where he restructured everything and put everything under Berkshire Hathaway. So from then on, all his investment ran through Berkshire Hathaway. And it was also then from 1965, Berkshire Hathaway book value really started climbing because he was investing through the company and he was just building wealth through the company. Right. Okay. And by 1976, Geico came across Geico again. Buffett came across Geico again, and that was when the company sort of have a scandal, and the stock, plummeted to only $2 per share or something. And he realized that now is a time where he can buy a great company at a low cheap price, and he really invested huge into it. Geico was also one of Benjamin Graham's best investment actually. So even as a deep value investor where he buy cheap stock and sell them when they reach fair value, throughout Benjamin Graham's life, Geico turned out to be one of his best investment. So even for a deep value investor, end up the most money he make was from a company that is of great quality and continuous growing. Okay. So by 1970s, 1980s, Buffett really started to make a name for himself, and that's when Berkshire stocks really increases a lot. His personal wealth, I think by the late 70s, was close to 100 plus million. But the problem is he is effectively quite poor still, because he never sold a share of his company, and he only take a salary of $50,000 a year. So everything that he got, even though he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, is tied up in Berkshire, a stock that he never sells. In terms of cash flow, he's quite poor. So his family never really grew up rich. They grew up quite middle class. And this is really how you have to think about if we aspire to him, are we willing to kind of live the lifestyle that he has led? You can see that even for him, much of his wealth is made after when he was in his late 50s or 60s. You can see that in when he was 40 plus, he is already a millionaire, sure, but he wouldn't be considered anywhere super rich, right? He might be seen as a middle class businessman, but only after the power of compounding really started compounding, the more and more you keep reinvesting in your wealth. And Buffett is a guy that is, number one, super frugal, and he is very, very good at delay gratification. Right? It's almost until death he has no plan to spend his money. In fact, he has really no plan to spend his money. Right? He's gonna give it away, and so he's only rich on paper, but not really rich on cash flow. And it's almost like a disease for him because he is not able to spend so much money, because every time he spends something, he's going to think about, wow, I spend this money, if compounded for how many years, it's going to be, how many thousand of dollars, a few $100,000, and he crippled himself. He couldn't make that decision. So for example, if you want to buy an iPhone today, it costs him $1,000, but in his mind he's gonna think like, wow, $1,000 return on 20% a year for the next 30 years is gonna be 237,000 or something. And so he couldn't make the decision to buy and to spend so much. So is this, if you want to emulate him, is this the lifestyle you want to live? If it is not the lifestyle that we want to live, but how can we still reach at least a comfortable stage of our life, right? This is the Berkshire performance, or in terms of book value against the market cap, against the S&P. You can see that he almost have an annual compounding rate of about 18 plus 19% a year, whereas the market is about 10% a year. So even for a super investor like Buffett, he's compounding his wealth at about 20% a year, right? So it also comes back to having realistic expectation when we are investing. For Buffett, he's compounding at 20% a year. How much should we target ourselves to be investing, to be returning a year? So this is his portfolio right now. You can see that, in fact, he make some of the stock he owned for a long time, and the real multi-bagger that he has, actually not that much, right? Not that much that he has make very, very strong growth before. And these are actually the company that he bought for when they have some trouble. So these are companies that the most ideal when it comes to us investing is we are able to buy great company facing a huge scandal or crisis, but it's only temporary and it can come back. And it don't happen a lot. It happened, a few times in a lifetime. The rest of the time, maybe we have to make do with buying either great companies at a fair price, or buying very, very cheap stock at a mediocre company at a very, very cheap price. So another quote of his is, our favorite holding period is forever, right? But if we invest like Buffett, we will never get the chance to spend the money that we make. So even before we start investing, I think it's good to think about what is the end goal that we want to have, right? To Buffett, it is a game. To Buffett, it's really a game, and he just want to win in the game. So he want to be a great investor with a lot of net worth to show that he's a great investor, and he's not going to spend that money because it's just a game to him. But for a lot of us, we might have some expectation or requirement for our lifestyle. That's fine. And especially in Singapore, society has kind of expectation on us, on our lifestyle, right? In Singapore, everybody must go on holiday a year or twice a year. That's something that we must do. We must strive to buy a condominium, right? That's something we must. Society has on expectation on us, and if we are able to not care about society expectation, that's fine. And But if this is something that you want to work towards, what I suggest is have that target in mind. Have that lifestyle that you want in life. That's not just about you, right? Of course, to your spouses as well. My idea of a good lifestyle is very different from my wife. So you have to communicate with your spouses and come up with something that have a target of the ideal lifestyle that you want and how much wealth or money that you actually need to have that lifestyle. So for example, if your target is to replace, say, your current income, you can easily work it backwards. Say, just as an example, if you're earning like 5K a month, that's 60,000 a year. And if we can sustainably have a 5% return from the market, it means that we need about 1.2 million to have that $60,000 a year, right? So we can, at the beginning, invest really like Buffett and live like Buffett frugally until we reach that magical, say, 1.2 million in our portfolio. Then we can switch our portfolio and to either income portfolio or something that's give us sustainably 5-6% a year with a stable cash flow of 60,000, and we can live off that. And you can choose to quit your job or start something and have more peace of mind and have the lifestyle that you want. So the point is really to have a target in mind rather than start investing because everybody is investing. Start because I'm chasing wealth, which I don't even know why I want it for. Once we have a clearer investment target in mind, we would have be able to set a clearer strategy, and also it sort of give us better determination if we have to struggle through at the beginning to reach the place that we want to go. So that's something that I learned from studying Buffett's life. I hope that is useful to you as well. If you have any question on that, I love to chat a little bit more about you, either about Buffett's life, or you want to go to Berkshire Hathaway AGM. How do we do that? CC is asking, have I shake Buffett's hand? No, unfortunately, no. I couldn't get so close to him. I was only able to view him from the top of the auditorium. And yeah, but it was a very good experience. But other than the Berkshire Hathaway AGM, really Omaha is not a very special town. So if you happen to be there, take some time off outside of Omaha also to see the States as well. Cool. Let me reset my stream again just to make sure I don't miss out on any of your questions. Okay, if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them. If not, remember that you can still continue to chat with me either through our Facebook forum or also through our event page. There's a comments tab down below. So do check that out as well. If that's all for you guys, let's take a short lunch break, and I'll come back after lunch at 2 p.m. and let's have our final session and end our Grand Webinar 2020. Thank you very much. My name is Stanley. Till the afternoon, invest safely, guys.